Welcome Ultimate fans, and so glad you could tune in today. I want to welcome you to the first ever AUDL Take episode. Before we jump into our first episode, I'd like to kind of go over who I am, that way you know who to make fun of. I'm Tucker Warner, started playing Ultimate back in 2007, played for Georgia State University, and then continued to play after, now play Mixed Club here in Atlanta. My background is in film. I did a lot of film work in college, worked for some small production companies, made some small little videos, and then when the AUDL came here in 2015, I primarily started working in broadcasting for them, doing a lot of camera work, and now exclusively doing the commentary for the Atlanta Hustle. Been doing that for the past 5 years, enjoyed every minute of it. But I know what you're really asking. What the heck is the show even about? Well, it's kind of a big, encompassing idea. If you look at other sports and other types of franchises that have kind of that weekly show where they kind of get you prepped each week, the in-between games kind of media where people talk and get people excited each week for the matchups. That's what this show is about, but there really hasn't been that kind of community built for the AUDL yet. Also, it gives you someone kind of a villain or a buddy with you along the AUDL season. There's going to be a lot of things that I have opinions on that you're probably not going to agree with. Some people might agree with me. You guys will go down in the comments below and kind of basically tell me, I don't know what I'm talking about. Wow, I've never thought of this before. Also, if you really kind of like this idea, make sure you hit that like button. But enough of all that. Let's jump into our first topic. First thing I want to talk about today, Division Realignment. This is some big changes for the AUDL. Most notably, it's the former Southern Division becoming the Atlantic Division. I want to kind of start there since there's just so much to chew on. Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, DC have kind of all moved from their divisions and have joined what used to be the South. You have Atlanta, Raleigh, and Tampa still there, which has now become the Atlantic Division. I think it's going to be a very interesting division, most notably because of the different styles of plays each team's going to have. The South has always been a more physical, tougher, grittier kind of Ultimate. The East, it's not as fluid and as pretty in the West, and it's not as physical and as dominant in the South, but they're creative and they have to play in so many different type of weather elements. You really see interesting throws and a different style of hustle that you don't see anywhere else in the league. Now combining these teams to put them all in one division, and now if things are still the same in how playoffs go, where if you have 6 teams, there's 3 playoff spots. This is going to be a really interesting dynamic, especially for DC, who have always been just kind of pushing into the East. They might kind of be in the same boat here, but they are going to be a little bit more dominant. As far as like my top 3 teams, I think that the Atlantic are really going to be Raleigh, DC, and Atlanta. But you do have Tampa, who always seems to have Atlanta's number. They could easily take that spot. Pittsburgh has become a dominant team over the years and have really built up their program. But once again, it's going to be how do these two styles of Ultimate come together? Which style is going to be more dominant? Who's going to adjust more is the real question. Let's jump to the West. We have Austin and Dallas leaving the former South Division to go join the West. Once again, we're talking about 2 different styles of Ultimate coming and clashing together. Dallas, always a threat. San Diego had a great run. LA's been doing really well. How they're going to compete against Dallas is the real question. Austin, once again, they had a tough time last year in the South, a lot of that due to injuries. Not quite sure how they're going to handle the West, but they actually might have a better playoff chance now than they have in the South, where everybody was really just fighting for that possible 3rd position. But as far as Dallas, this is just another division for them to look like they're going to try to just conquer. How that plays out coming into the playoffs ahead of time, I don't think this drastically changes Dallas's game plan or anything like that. They're still going to be the same old Dallas team they've always been. What used to be the Midwest is now the Central. Nothing massively changed. Pittsburgh left. Looking at Madison kind of rebound after a rough year, the championship slump year. Losing Pittsburgh, that's going to bring Chicago kind of back up into the forefront. There's only 5 teams, so most likely there's only going to be 2 playoff spots. This ultimately helps Chicago more than anybody because them two have always been the other battling. Minnesota, another team to look at. To me, they're going to become the new South. The South always had just the top 2 were always kind of figured out, but it was always just if there was that 3rd playoff spot, man, it could go to three-something teams. Now only having 2, each game is going to be so important. It's going to be a pretty wild season up there. As far as the East, it's still called the East. They lost probably the most amount of players or teams. Really, they gained a new team, and that's where we're going to start talking about in our next story. Boston finally has an AUDL team, the Boston Glory. I think this is something the AUDL has wanted for a long time. Boston is such a hub for Ultimate. Finally, we have probably one of the greatest city rivalries in the AUDL. You have New York and Boston. If you look at all the other leagues out there, these 2 cities are always going at it. This actually might be a big thing for non-Ultimate people. You have a lot of sports fanatics in those towns. AUDL is kind of in that sweet spot of a lot of other leagues are in their off seasons. The AUDL can really market this as a big rivalry where you have a lot of fans who are just going to be interested in, oh, I don't like New York. I'll watch any sport where we can beat New York. Same for New York. If we can beat Boston, I just want to go there and see it. So I'm very interested to see, will they be competitive? Will they be close games? And that really depends on what kind of roster Boston puts up. I think there's a lot of premier talent there. The question is, will they jump into the AUDL fray? A lot of these players still like playing in the club world and see that as the more legitimate ultimate community. You've got a lot of young people that come out of there that are incredibly talented. Maybe some teams players that have been passed up in the club scene make the jump to the AUDL, and we start to see an amazing new talent. Will Boston right out of the gate be like Dallas or like New York last year and just put and field a roster of dreams? I think it's a little unlikely. That really depends on if New York can keep a lot of their players. Boston coming into this league, look at how much they've already caused. They literally caused a complete division realignment. They made a big wave before they've even really set up their team name or their rosters. We're creating probably one of the greatest rivalries, potentially greatest rivalries in the AUDL, coming off of two cities that for the most part aren't big fans of each other. And I'm excited to see if Boston can get a playoff spot. But a lot needs to be done for Boston. They really need to field a good roster, and they just need to make sure that they play each game competitively. There's only going to be 2 playoff spots, and Toronto is not a team that wants to give up that kind of hierarchy that they've had in that division for a while. Boston could be that threat. So we're just going to have to see how that pans out for them. On to our final topic of this episode. It's really the new signings that we're seeing, and we'll kind of talk about what players may stay or go in other teams. But really I want to talk about Kirk Gibson and Kyle Hankey, both going to Dallas. But we're going to start with Kirk Gibson. Is this really a big deal for Dallas? Yes and no. Kirk Gibson by no means isn't like someone we should just bat away and be like, whatever, Kirk Gibson, okay. He is a consistent, solid player that will definitely revolutionize your weapons. But coming into Dallas with such a solid line already there, does he really stand out more than some of these other players that are starting to really develop there in Dallas? I don't think so. But what he does bring to you is that depth. Dallas is already one of the most competitive teams who plays all 4 quarters better than any other team in the league. And so now just to have someone like Kirk Gibson added to that depth and that consistent, smart play that he brings to your team is going to make him even tougher to beat. But I don't think he's drastically going to change anything for Dallas. He's not someone that you're not used to playing or know how his style is. He's been around for a long time. You know what he's going to do, and he's going to do well. Can you stop it? That's the big question. He's just adding more depth to an already strong and consistent line. But who I'm really interested in is Kyle Hankey. Him moving to Dallas is a big deal for me. He had an incredible start in the last few years in Austin. He had a great play against LA where he dove and got the game winner. He had the greatest play against Tampa, throwing it from the sideline all the way across the field and getting scores. He's explosive, he's exciting, and he's relatively new in the ultimate sphere, especially here in the AUDL. Now moving to the West and being with Dallas, he's that other wild card where if you're not used to playing him, there's not a lot of tape to look at. There isn't this historical context of this is how he plays and this is what he's good at. There's still a lot for him to learn, and there's still a lot of other things for other players to learn about him. So Kyle Hankey coming in here, it was kind of like Carson Wilder. We knew a little bit about Carson Wilder, but as soon as he came in, you're just like, wow, he continues to impress you. Hankey's just another one of those players. He's going to be explosive, he's going to make great plays, and just adding him to this Dallas team, I don't think we've seen the best of Kyle Hankey yet, and I think Dallas is going to bring that out in him. Dallas, to me, looks like the team to beat. Will that really come to fruition now that they're in a new division, depending on, they haven't played these teams as much? I still don't think it's going to really slow them down. They're going to get a playoff spot. I think everybody kind of knows that. There could be an upset, there could be injuries, there's a lot of things that can go wrong for Dallas, but once again, they have the depth, they have the explosiveness, they have the grit, they play 4 quarters better than anyone else. I think Dallas, with these 2 signings, just bolstered their chance for getting another championship in the AUDL. Before we kind of wrap up this segment and this episode, I kind of want to talk about New York for just a short minute. They had an incredible run last year. Ben Yacht kind of finally getting that championship. The last 2 years, he's just become a superstar and rightfully getting the MVP last year. The big question is, what players now that have won an AUDL championship aren't going to be interested in it anymore? Turnover in the AUDL is always happening. Players are going to play for other teams. Look at Goose. He's been all over the league. So New York's big question, can they keep the same players? And if they do, I can see them repeating. But that's going to pretty much wrap up our first episode. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. This is a one-man show. I'm just setting up the set, setting up the camera, doing all the lights all myself. But I just want to thank you all for tuning in. It's going to be an exciting season coming up. If you want to follow more about the AUDL, check out their Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. The exhibition games this year have been incredible. The AUDL has always tried to market to non-ultimate people. I think this was the most they've ever done. If you add up all the ones they've done before, we've did 5 or so this off season. So it's incredible what they're doing. We're getting in front of a lot of people, and hopefully each time you get in front of those 50, 60, 70,000 fans, we can just pull a couple hundred and just get more and more people excited about this league. It's going to be a great year in AUDL 2020, and I'm excited to see where all this goes. The Division Realignment, Boston, all the new signings, the new players that we may see coming into Boston and across the league. I'm excited for an AUDL 2020. I hope you are too. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you hit like, subscribe. I'll see you next week. Thanks again for joining me on the AUDL Take.